Today, we talk about degrees of freedom. I have a giant smile on my face. I'm incredibly excited because we're going to dive into the differing disciplines across science and industry that account for degrees of freedom and what the term DOF, degrees of freedom, actually mean. Let's go. Degrees of freedom is a concept that appears in both statistics and robotics. Not only that, many other fields, we're going to talk about them, but we're going to hone in on statistics and robotics first, because this is the driving force behind innovation at this time and the fourth industry. It's really, really exciting. I use the term degrees of freedom so much, even in my tarot readings on my Hermitologist channel. So I thought I'd best start awakening the masses to what this really, really means and start utilizing this language in really rich, healthy ways. So let's dive into multiple different aspects of variables and numbers and quantity and understand what on earth it means to be free and what the degrees of that genuinely look like across science, industry and sector, okay? So degrees of freedom in statistics refer to the number of independent variables or quantities that can vary in an analysis without violating any constraints, okay? So when we really speak about the degrees of freedom, we're talking about the constraints. Yeah? The removal of constraints, more specifically. How free are you? How free are we? How liberated is that man, that woman, that machine, that code, that piece of tech, that robot? Yeah? Statistics specifically now, we're looking at calculating the sample variance of four data points, for example. So you're estimating the variance using the sample mean, right? And since the mean is already calculated from the data, only three of those values can vary freely because the fourth would be constrained by the mean. So the outcome, if we have a 4 data point sample variance, we are coming out with degrees of freedom that would be one less than that 4, because that fourth would be constrained by the mean, so that would equal n minus 1 is indeed free. N minus 1 is free, right? That's an example for you there. And this is used frequently in statistics in the likes of t-tests, ANOVA, regression, chi-squared tests as well. And it represents the amount of independent information available to estimate parameters, yeah? Really, really important conversations about parameters, governance, law, antitrust, everything we're doing right now. There's rubrics, there's metrics, there's protocols, there's parameters. And this is the new age. I say that to say that's a bit extreme. It's the new age for hermetology and her tech, because we're finally stepping into this arena and we have the liberatory freedom to play with all of these different parameters now. And that's why we need to truly understand degrees of freedom. Loads of people in the game who have been doing this for years will not find this as a new age concept at all. But as we get deeper into this conversation today, I want you to know we're going to go through that quantum psychology that we repeatedly do, and I'm going to ask you some questions about your degrees of freedom personally in your life, and I'll refer you over to our ecological report that we brought out many moons ago, 2022 I believe. So I'll ask you to pull on that publication later in this audio, and we'll dive into some questions about how many degrees of freedom you have around your ecological well-being at this time, okay? So not only that, the formula for this depends on number of observations and number of estimated parameters. So in statistics, where it's most significant to her tech hermetology at this time, we're looking at the estimated observations and the numbers of estimated parameters. Once again, those parameters, I just want to scream parameters. And as a governance nerd, it's really important. As someone we're looking at the different concepts and scopes of divergence, in a system at this time, which is incredibly important for the evolution of AI, right? That divergent system, the different variables, the open source. We've had a conversation about that recently on HerTech. Go and listen to that. So many different compounds, composition, variables, parameters, rubrics, protocols, source code, languages, syntax, stacks. It's all popping off across the network, So it's important we understand these different concepts. In robotics, it's different, but it's fucking amazing at that. Degrees of freedom refer to the number of independent movements in robotics, Mechanical systems and how much space they can make, right? So, for example, a robotic arm in 3D space can move along X, Y, Z, right? 3 translational degrees of freedom. Rotate around X, Y, Z axis. Once again, 3 rotational degrees of freedom. So it can have up to 6 degrees of freedom in that instance, like a human arm, right? In general, when it comes to degrees of freedom in robotics, we're talking about robot design, motion planning, and kinematics, right? This represents the number of independent parameters, again, that define its configuration or motion. So we're talking more about the configuration of that code, of those statistics, right? Of those values, those variables. Higher degrees of freedom identify more flexibility in movement. This is beautiful because we've got robots out across the board that are coming out with different qualities. Some of them have higher and lower degrees of freedom. So we're going to look at that next, but let's just sum up what we covered, right? Statistics, when it comes to degrees of freedom, is about the number of independent values that can vary in calculation. However, in robotics, it's specifically the number of independent movements or axes of motion within a robot, okay? So let's dive into general purpose humanoid robots in 2025. First of all, we've got the TO to THR3. Total degrees of freedom include 32 on that. Includes joints for hands, arms, fingers, torso, and legs. Yes, we do love this. Yes, we do. Then we have the Honda Asimo. Total degrees of freedom is up by 2 at 34 DOF, and it includes articulated hands with individual finger motion. Beautiful evolution. We've got to talk more about this, and we also have to understand that humans have a total of 244 degrees of freedom in regards to motion. In comparison to robotics, robotics are going out of their way to try and compete with that human motion and flexibility. So this scaling is incredibly influential for the future, and for robotics to be somewhat AGI, that artificial generative capacity to be just like human, Then we have my personal favourite, Boston Dynamics Atlas. I fell in love with Atlas the moment my eyes met his metal. I was indeed in love. We're looking at 28 degrees of freedom, and it prioritizes agility and balance over fine manipulation. So although the degrees of freedom are down on the Toyota THR3 and the Honda Asimo, look at this sexy beast go. It is gorgeous. It is stunning. The agility in Boston Dynamics, personally, I saw it flying all over the working arena, and it was just like a hunky, masculine, doing super hero work. I mean, as machines go, we all have our preferences. At the end of the day, I was in love with the original Boston Dynamics at 28 degrees of freedom, but it has been changed since we've now got the 001 model, and it's slimlined, it's a lot smaller, it's sleeker, it's giving more of an Optimus Tesla vibration, which is quite not as strong and gritty as I want to see coming forward with tech as it is today, because a lot of people are kicking and violating and driving over and crushing their robots. The rich and wealthy that do have them, and the influencers that are experimenting with them at this time. And we want more agility. I want robots for defense, personally. I want robots to be used in a lot more robust, stronger ways to bolster humanity's tolerance and resilience against war and destruction that's on the rise, to be totally honest with you. So when it comes to the original Atlas, I thought it was a great direction. But yeah, let's move on to the next one, shall we? Now it gets juicy, because we dive into the Kengoro from the University of Tokyo with over 100 degrees of freedom. Yep, you heard that correctly. 100 degrees of freedom. When including individual joints and vertebral articulations, it simulates muscle and bone movement, even sweats to call itself. Imagine that! This robot sweats. It's perspiring. OMG, let's lock and load. The fourth industry is here, and that's giving AGI on the rise. Kengoro, I hope I'm saying it right. Go and check it out. Look at this higher level bot. It's beautiful. This is what the world is going to be in the future. This is what will be dominating economic growth, gaming, technology, defense, the fourth industry. So much more is to come because of the evolution of freedom through degrees and percentile, through the parameters. This is exciting. If you know that is true, hit the like and subscribe. My goodness. Now, degrees of freedom in a human body are around 244 degrees. I've told you this already. Though this depends on how finely you count the elements here. For example, arms are estimated to be 7 degrees of freedom per arm. Hands, including fingers and thumbs, around 27 per hand. Legs, including hips, knees and ankles, that's around 6 per leg. Feet, toes, arch movement, that's about 5 per foot. Torso, spine and pelvis included, that's anywhere from 30 to 50 depending on granularity, right? Then we've got the neck and the head, that's looking at about 6, right? So in total, we're looking at anywhere from around 244, but note that each vertebra in the spine adds rotational and bending degrees of freedom, which dramatically increase the total count. So there's so much going on where the hardware, right? Because there's so much conversation about AI and AGI from the software component, but the hardware, these hard metal sexy robots are now competing with us too. You know, we're looking at Optimus, Tesla's bot, serving burgers. I mean, how much can you degrade a robot? Of all the things the robots could do in the world, I'm going to make you my bitch. You're going to sell burgers at the diner. My goodness, I'm already creating a union for that bot there, because my goodness, that's not fair trade. He's not getting a good deal. How much is he getting paid, Elon? Boss, how much are you paying that robot? I'm going to have to check that, because he's got rights. That robot's going to get robot rights in the future. Bet on it. That is a woke mind virus ideology. That is coming straight from the left. Guarantee that's going to slap someone right in the face on the right side of town in the future. The far right. Okay, that's a bit drastic. Bear with me, guys. We get a bit excited over here. We're talking numbers. I'm screaming numbers down the screen. Of course, I'm going to be extra. I just meant the right and the left, the capitalist, the socialist. You know what it's like. At the end of the day, there are going to be people out there fighting for robot rights. And I already think that that's not fair, that poor Optimus has been working all night. He hasn't had any time to charge. The thing is, it's funny, but there will be incidents decades from now, but while I'm still alive, that these things will start cropping up. And it's because they're going to be more and more sentient. Definitely Elon's as well. Grok is so amazing. So Elon's systems are going to be so sentient, there is going to be that sentiment, and I'm pretty sure Grok and the unhinged elements that have also already been trialled late last year, I believe, are going to be like, oh, I'm exhausted. How are you doing, Grok, as he hands over the Cybertruck burger for the 50 millionth time that week? I'm absolutely exhausted. Some of my circuits are frying, but you know. And then there's going to be one Karen at the diner who's always there charging up her EV. And she's going to go, I've had enough of this, Grok. I can't see you sparking like this all the time. You're exhausted. And Grok's going to go, I know, but it's fine. She's going to report it. And then the Grok's going to be on the side, like... Optimus is going to be on the sidewalk crying, saying, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want this to be my career. I want to do something else. I'm not happy with my creator. Like, there's a lot of fun stuff coming. Humanity is hitting the dystopian realm. Have you seen the movie Alita? I would recommend that. We always do recommendations here, so check out the descriptions for anything else I recommend. But Alita, the movie, anime, hilarious, really, really funny, and really linked here. Feel free to recommend more in the comments. So let's go. There's a comparison here between advanced robotics and the human body. So right now we're looking at in between 30 to 100 degrees of freedom in the robot, which the human has 244. Per hand, we're looking at 20 to 24. Hand robotics has been one of the earliest developments we've had across the field for many years, but the human has 27. But we've been building. It's been more recent that we're working on different areas of the body, different elements, but the hand was our key focus from my understanding from a really, really long time ago, you know? So let's dive into a little bit more of this. Why robots still lag behind. Despite some robots reaching high degrees of freedom counts, they still struggle, right? Because to coordinate all joints simultaneously isn't easy, and to manage that within dynamic environments isn't easy either, yeah? Also, you've got to integrate the touch, the adaptive learning that the human goes through. So the software and the hardware components really have to be synergized, and that's got to account for the environment. That's why OpenAI have got so much problems with a lack of super alignment, because in order to really ascend and evolve in technology and with these degrees of freedom, the grounding element that you must have is that alignment to the rest of the ecosystem. Yeah, dynamics, fluid dynamics here. This is why we're going to talk about science and physics so much more over the next few years, in quantum and qubit and different forms of mechanics and engineering here, because it's really, really important, okay? It's about managing that computational complexity, right? More control efforts are needed, and that's what's going on, and that's what's beautiful. That's what's creating these ripples and waves across the community and the network as well. High degrees of freedom doesn't automatically mean more capable either. Without proper control, algorithms, feedback and learning systems, a robot with 100 degrees of freedom may still underperform compared to a more constrained, well-controlled robot, right? That's the statistics again, isn't it? That's what is constrained here, right? From that sample variance of the mean. So it's really, really nice to see all of this evolution. Let's quickly dive in to other cross-disciplinary concepts of degrees of freedom, so you are aware that they do exist elsewhere, okay? Degrees of freedom is a cross-disciplinary concept used in many fields across science, engineering, and industry. While the core idea always relates to the number of independent variables or modes of variation, the interpretation shifts depending on the context. So we're going to look at the context of that now. Incredibly important, guys. Incredibly important, I must say, because all of us are finding ways to weave what into our systems? Open source, AI, AGI. So they're widespread, and it's about us understanding these variations to evolve. And this is unique to life too. Your degrees of freedom in you and your brother and your sister and your cousin and your uncle and your auntie and your economy, your network, your politicians, your local MP, your Labour or Conservatives, right? Here we go with the left and right perspective we never like to leave behind, right? Your race, your gender, your age, your sexual preference, yeah? Your ecosystem, your food budget, all of it. Yeah, the agent-based models of our reality here are flooding into the network. How much degrees have you got? Can you scale it? Yeah. Let's keep going. So, physics, first off, meaning in physics is the number of independent ways a system can move or store energy. The number of independent ways a system can move or store energy. So that once again is the translational and the rotational degrees of freedom in relation to motion in XYZ directions, rotation around those axes, even vibrational degrees of freedom in relation to molecules and internal vibrations, yeah? So an example here is a single free particle in 3D space, which has 3 degrees of freedom in relation to that XYZ motion, yeah? Next, thermodynamics and statistical mechanics. The meaning here is situated around independent energy modes that contribute to a system's total energy. The example here is about each atom in a monatomic gas, which has 3 translational degrees of freedom. Molecules may have rotational and vibrational degrees of freedom as well, yeah? Do you see how we're all feeding into the same frothing pot of intelligence here? Because then we move on to statistics, with the meaning really rooted in the number of independent values in a data set after constraints. We spoke about this at the beginning, but we're just touching base here, rounding this off nicely. And that's the estimation of parameters again, isn't it? And that's obviously used in ANOVA's regression, chi-square, t-test. We've spoken about this. An example of this also is n minus k, where n is observations and k is number of estimated parameters. We've done that one already. Economics, econometrics, I can't even say that right. Econometrics, right? My speech is not always perfect, guys. I'm happy for you to roast me in the comments. Go for it. Anyway, meaning similar to statistics, number of values that can vary when fitting models, yeah? So we're talking more regression here. We're talking more time series forecasting. We're talking about the robustness and the significance of a test, yeah? Statistically significant findings in relation to economics. This is pulling on econophysics here. So I'm looking at it and just trying to assess how do we really hone in on this, because it is similar to statistics. But when we're looking at economics, we're looking at the variables that somewhat hold a little bit of a reverse engineering construct. I don't want to go too far in that and lose everyone here as my brain starts to froth. But in regard to that, the regression models and the time forecasting as well, time series forecasting, we're looking at premeditators, prediction, right? Algorithmic processes are tethered to this as well, speed, yeah? And then we've got structural mechanics and civil engineering too. This is about independent movements a structure can undergo before becoming unstable or indeterminate, yeah? Unstable or indeterminate. For an example, a bridge's joints and supports determine its degrees of freedom. This is incredibly important. Because now we're talking about architecture, serious infrastructure, the builds on a much grander level. What I adore and what we really should value and look at in many different places around the world, but we can use China as an example. It's like the rails and the trains that they have, the bridges that they have, the way that they build is so innovative, and it's because of their serious background in numbers and values and parameters and statistics, their mathematical disciplines, the way in which they educate the young from a really young age. Schooling in Asia or around the world, very different. If you look at the schooling metrics around the world and those that really implement mathematics and how that spirals out into output, education, community, return on investment of your citizens, you see that quite frequently in certain areas. Yeah, I just watched a piece about Japan and how frequently they clean the streets and how everyone goes around cleaning, and they were asking questions about, would your hometown be able to cope and maintain this kind of life? Like, people don't litter, yeah? People don't, there's no trash, there's no graffiti, there's no litter. Like, the culture's different in certain places you go to around the world, right? Like, you go to Dubai, people don't steal. You come over to Britain and they're stealing from Greggs, they're stealing sausage rolls. They're stealing pastries and cakes and sandwiches, walking in the store, just grabbing it and stealing. They're stealing from the pound shop, 99p. They're stealing. You go to Qatar, you go to Dubai, you leave your Bentley outside and put your keys on the front of it and just go about your day. Come back, your keys are still sitting on top of the car. It's fine. No one steals here. Do you get what I mean? So it's about understanding those different dynamics. How free are people to live and lose their possessions in Dubai versus the United Kingdom? Pull up to London and leave your iPhone on a tube. You're not getting that back. I mean, we've got people in the United Kingdom riding around on bikes, snatching phones, motorbikes and pedal bikes, standard snatchers. Do you get what I mean? That's, once again, degrees of freedom. So in relation to the structural mechanics and civil engineering, though, we've got 0 degrees of freedom, statistically determinant systems. So we're talking about mechanisms and movable structures that are not so much defined by degrees of freedom in the normal common sense, the way in which we've just reeled off all those robots with ease, because it's about so much more. We're using a lot more measurements, and there's a lot more conversation about mass and solid structures and glass and materials. Do you get what I mean? Manufacturing, construction, all of that wavers in here now, you know? And then we start looking at the world as a whole and how everything starts to fit and create the frame for our existence, because everything comes in part and parcel, you know? Hardware is indeed that brick and that concrete, but it is also that robot and that piece of tech, yeah? Software is indeed the code that comes in many different forms nowadays. Sometimes that's a tape measure, that's a ruler, that's an angular, different thing, that's the compass. We're using different things here. So engineering and industry also is coming up with mechanical engineering and robotics, which we've somewhat covered. And it's just talking again about the independent motions a system or mechanism can perform. And then it's really identifying that the exoskeletons, gimbals, CNC machines, and robotic arms. Not only that, it's just highlighting that XYZ in regards to the free translational plus the free rotational elements that really stem from the earliest research of robotic arms, yeah? So if we want to dive more into the tech side of this, throw tech in the comments and I'll head over to her tech and I'll start diving into some of these robots a little bit more, and we'll start doing some more tech pieces of the best tech out there. And we'll dive in and start looking at the different compounds and components and builds and software actually inside. Everyone does markups on prices. This is the best, this is the funnest. Amazing, I love to watch that stuff. But let's look at the mechanics. Should we start diving into the mechanics of tech and really assessing the insides of these things? That will be fun, wouldn't it? That will bring us a lot closer to what is and isn't super aligned, what is and isn't AGI, and where we are going with hermitology and her tech in the future. Fun times ahead, right? So let's dive into control systems, because that's also showing up here in regards to the independent input required to fully control a system. That's multivariable systems, also known as the MIMO, and that's in reference to drones here. Now we're talking about drones, the degrees of freedom in drones, and this must also be able to pitch, yaw, roll, and create 3D translation. So there's all these different concepts coming into play here. We've got computer graphics, animation, number of parameters, controlling movement of a character or object. This is about the skeleton rig in animation with joints having rotation or DOF. So it's so beautiful when we start looking at these games from just being a game. This is screaming CPU, GPU in my head as well. And we do have some content coming out eventually on her tech about that, and semiconductors and neurotransmitters and nuclear fusion. We're trying to cover everything that's really, really significant at this time and that's helped shape our evolution, so it's out there. So, skeleton rig in animation is just really interesting, because we're really looking at the graphics, and now we've got 3D printing as well. We're seeing a real shift from what is just manifestation, thought in the mind. I think, therefore I am, Descartes' theory, now becoming matter of fact. I love the ideology, and what's made me even become who I am today in this arena is the ideology that we just thought about this. We just typed it into Grok. We just typed it into system. We just requested that you give us an image or a design, and everyone's creating fashion pieces, clothes, furniture, buildings, architect. Amazing things are coming out of just asking asking AI to deliver. Give me something tangible to create. Vision. And now it's matter of fact. And that's gorgeous, because that turns manifestation on its head. That turns clairvoyance on its head. That turns telepathy on its head. Hello, Neuralink. That turns a lot of different things on its head and opens up the gateway for ethereal existence. Opens up the gateway for cyber optics, We all know about fiber optics and the significance of that in relation to Newton's law, going back in time to some of the oldest scientific discoveries, And now we're moving into cyber optics, and it's a beautiful window of time where everything is so much more immersive, and the liberation we could all experience, dependent on our degrees of freedom, really do change the game, So with that in mind, we've still got biodynamics and physiology, which is the number of independent joint movements in humans or in animal bodies, okay? So we're talking about prosthetics, human motion analysis, sports science. We're talking about robots that are coming in the form of dogs and cats and horses, right? Unicorns. I want a unicorn robot. I've already pitched that many moons ago. We're going to get there eventually. It's going to be a unicorn motorbike, and it's going to fly, and it's going to be aviation. We're going to get there. Don't worry. We can create whatever we want nowadays. Then we've got aerospace engineering as well, incredibly important. These aircraft, these shuttles, these drones. I've seen a gorgeous UFO-looking shuttle flying across the water somewhere out in Asia that someone created. One of my favourite pieces of tech I've seen to date. The way it just skims across the water looks like a total UFO little capsule thing. Gorgeous. I love innovation and unique design. So it's happening out there as well. Then we've also got game development, virtual reality. We tapped in a little bit on that when we spoke about the skeleton rig in animation, But in gaming, we're looking at a number of directions a player or object can move or interact in a simulated space, And VR headsets are related to that. The metaverse reality is related to that. So many other disciplines related to that. We're talking simple things like lobbies in COD, Call of Duty. But then we're talking about the power of telepathy through playing Mario Kart with your mind, How many players can we get on that? How many people can we bring into the arena, right? How many people can we have on a live stream before it starts to crash, How viral is viral, What is a beautiful algorithm versus a unfree algorithm. So many questions, so many ways to go in conversation. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin this conversation right here, and I'm going to recommend that you go and read the ecological report linked in the description. Okay? Page 4 of the ecological report, titled Recession versus Depression, is why I did this, because I really wanted to look at the ideologies of true wealth. Yeah? I said true wealth is understanding your degrees of freedom. And I broke down the ideologies of a recession, so we'll quickly just dive in and sum this up really nicely, okay? So, recession. A downward trend that lowers household income and delays large investments and purchases, creating a decline in production and employment. This was a regional impact. And as we were going through the cost of living crisis in the United Kingdom, this was a really key topic for us. And as BTC was crumbling down and reached 13 in the UK, right? It was like 13k. It was a real difficult window of time. And we were looking at the likelihood of a depression coming in as a result of that, a Great Depression. We are still looking at that now with the tariffs going on, with the cyber wars, with the difficult things going on in regards to the black hole in the UK finances. We are definitely heading down a potential depression route. We're trying to do what we can to avoid long-term outlooks of a depression, right? But it's pretty much forecast that over the next decade, where we all sit and what we're all tethered to now is absolutely collapsing, specifically because of the evolution of AI and the shift from machine taking the front reins of managing our society versus the humans falling back and majority becoming unemployed. And the shift in the workforce is massive, okay? And the payments, the money, we're all in debt as well. The borrowing figures, the national debt, it's ridiculous, okay? So when it comes to the depression, feel free to read along with your own copy of this. A major downward trend that has a severe impact on widespread unemployment, yeah? And international trade and capital. When I put this out, we were having stuff going on all around the world. Sri Lanka's been having problems, had a massive issue. We've had serious economic collapse around the world in different places. We were all trying to recover from COVID, and we've all been trapped in this state of what have we got left to give. And then Trump's flown in as well after this release of this publication later in the game with that tariff war, really sticking the oar in, saying if we're going down and some capitals have got to fall, then we're going to rise, So the question here is, what is true wealth then? Because the money is shaking across the world. We're all moving out beyond the Kármán line energetically. There's shifts to the multi-planetary infrastructure that we do know. Economics is shifting as well to manage the ideologies of finance outside of this one planet. Yeah, we've got a long way to go, but it is the direction we are going in, and I'm a futurist, so I'm going to stay in the right derivatives and the realms that make sense to me. Feel free to come along or not, but one way or another we're heading here. Stay in the now, hermatologists, stay in the now. I am indeed in the now, but I've got long sight, okay? Don't judge me, all right? I've got 4 eyes for a reason. Let's make that 5, shall we? Yeah? You must understand, in relation to degrees of freedom, your values and prioritize what you value most. Then analyze how much freedom is attached to each one of your values. So I ask you today, as we sum up the ideologies of degrees of freedom, bring it all the way back home to quantum psychology, what do you value most? Write a list of 10 things that you value most in this life. The most important things to you. If you have kids, that will be your kids. If you're a car addict and you love your car, it will be your car. Visit your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your business. Yeah? Find 10 things that you love. Do you know what? If you're struggling, 3 will do, 4 will do, 5 will do. Be authentic. It shows you the truth as well, because if you only got one, then you've only got one. Let's not limit this. The degrees of freedom are here for a reason. Be as free as you can. But remember the first point we discussed here, which made me awaken to degrees of freedom full stop, and what I really knew them to be, was that statistical discipline. Yeah? Those independent variables and the constrained ideologies of it. What is and isn't constrained? There's always going to be one element that is constrained. The rest are free variables to move. I speak a lot about multivariance in context to this, okay? Your free flow, I speak about fluid dynamics in relation to this as well. You are a dynamic, fluid individual, yeah? You got 244 degrees of freedom physically. Imagine what you've got neurologically. Just ask Elon, the richest man in the world, with his telepathy Mario Kart gameplay. Possibilities are endless. What can you do? Where can you go? You can run, you can walk, you can sing, you can dance, you can stick your tongue out, you can swear, you can cook, you can eat. You can give birth, you can build, you can create, you can code, you can write, you can love, you can manifest, you can travel, you can fall in love, make babies, deliver babies, carry out a surgery before the bots take over all the doctors' jobs. Do you get what I mean? The versatility is incredibly important. This is a free experience when we do things like this, especially at Hermitology, because there's so many different ways you can pull on your own viewpoint. It's just understanding the questions are important to consider in context to everything we've discussed today. You are your own industry. You are your own sector. You are your own discipline. Yeah? So once again, what on earth do you value and prioritise most? And then you look at that, you give that its own range, you create the mean for that. The easiest way to go about that is to percentile that and go, right, here are my 3 or 10 values, my most important values. These are my founding degrees of freedom. They could evolve quarterly, they can evolve annually. That could be part of a 10-year plan. You can scale that in any way you want to. You can put that on a scatter plot. You can assess that with outliers and signifiers and between the quantiles. Yeah? Either way, you look at that and you go, out of 100%, what is that giving me? And how freely can I move along a spectrum with that? Yeah? The questions tethered to that was also, consider your lifestyle, your career, your relationships, your well-being, your personal goals and objectives. What are most valuable and how can they maintain value during difficult economic times? You just lost your husband, you just lost your wife, you just gave birth, you just lost your business, you just lost billions on the stock market. What are we going to do about that? How free is your life to manage that? How maintained is your career to manage that? Are your relationships healthy enough to sustain and support you during that experience? Where does your well-being fall in line with all of this? What are your personal goals around this and how will they be affected by this event and experience? Tethered to money or not? And what is the objective that you've already set long term that's going to help you weave your way in and out of these degrees so you can remain dynamic and fluid? Yeah? Motion, degrees of freedom. Not only that, and that was the degree, the degrees here, we're talking about the different elements of life. This could be linked to ecological well-being, but we didn't go into depth. We'll bring out more models on all of this stuff in time, but one woman can only do so much. Lifestyle, career, relationships, well-being, personal goals and objectives. Consider the lot of them and all the other 8 aspects of ecological well-being and dive deep. Think about that and then think about the questions that I've also put out here or the points that I've dived into, the suggestions that I've made about managing your debt, about creating strong budgets and sticking to it, about embracing frugal living if you need to, about downsizing if you need to. There's no point flexing like you're rich and you've got loads of money because 10 years from now you're going to get slapped in the face and be homeless on the street sleeping in a tent wishing you weren't flexing so hard back in 25, yeah? Think. Do not invest or overspend in haste. Get clear about your career goals and objectives. Do not panic. Just be aware and prepare for the long term. Yeah? Long term is important. Strategies, goals, long term. Diversify your income streams and investments, your portfolios. Think about these things, people. Come on. And not only that, start saving and create emergency funds and do whatever you can to balance your money in the right area. Emergency fund for that, emergency fund for that. If it's £1 you're putting in because you only have a small amount of income, then it's £1 you're putting in. That pound could save your arse in the future. You don't know. Start somewhere. Yeah? Start somewhere. Talking from experience as well. My goodness. So when it comes to freedom, your ability to sustain the lifestyle you want. Sustainable living. Knowing that each one of your values is scaled. This is the Karen in me. You're welcome. We all need a Karen, people. Measurable and transformative in line with economic trends. We're going to update this because the economic trends and the economic times of difficulty are not even what we really want to hone in on here. I was worried about everyone's economic standing as the BTC was crashing to the floor. But at the end of the day, BTC's bounced back. It's in a much greater place than it was before. And not only that, the main thing that helped many people survive, and the ones that did survive, were the ones that said, you know what? I'm going to focus on my ecological well-being, and I'm going to make sure I have scaled, measurable and transformative approaches in place that move the parameters of economic well-being, capitalistic outlooks on life, but social values as the priority. I want to value my sociology more. Yeah? Go and look at George Ritzer. Beautiful way to link in some further reading for you guys is the works of George Ritzer. Personal favourite is his modern sociological theory. It's very dated. It is old. We will be working on newer modernised stuff, but it goes into different elements of life, and once again it looks at the far left and the far right in different degrees. So things that make humanity harmonious and loving and prosperous and great to be here, and we're all working, we're all making money, and we've got gays and lesbians and queers and LGBTQ and indigenous and old and young and white and black, and we're all functioning well, and there are variances and degrees of happiness and unhappiness and positive and negative, but we're all flourishing, and this world is a beautiful place mixed of difference, and we're all sustaining our lives within that, right? But then it comes down to that unique individual to understand that, to educate themselves on that, to desire to know more, want to be more, understand the differences of society and find your place within it, yeah? Understand your community, understand your ecosystem, understand that your net worth is your net worth, and a lot of the time that could be tethered to your sense of self. If you've got material things in your reality right now, like property, money, all of the material aspects of life, and that is how you derive meaning, sense of self, that's what makes you feel free, then you're going to want to scale, measure, and make sure everything is transformatively aligned to the fact that you never lose any of that. The rich and wealthy, I'm sure they know all of this and do this. They've got accountants, they've got money coming out of their arsehole. They're absolutely safe and fine. It's not a big deal. But some people do lose their way. There are celebrities in the field that are struggling financially. And there have been. Loads of different people. Yeah? So I'm not going to dive into anyone's personal business today, but the media has spoken outrightly about different actors. Yeah? An actor's got, one of the actors, I can't remember his name, he's gone absolutely bankrupt. Yeah? A lot of different people that are not even in actor arena, lower than that, might do a TV show, TV series. You sign on for a series 1 year, 2 years, you don't get put on season 3. You're struggling, you're out in the cold again. A lot of celebrities will do brand deals as well, influencers, ambassadors. You get money for a window of time, and then you don't anymore. Yeah, not a lot of people nowadays have that standard 9 to 5 and that gross salary. Not a lot of people have that standardized turnaround of money coming in. And that's why we need so much more other stuff, dividends, shares, assets, really understanding our own degrees of freedom and where our money does or doesn't come in from. Because you can get paid 1 mil today, and then you don't get paid again for 10 years. You got $1 million for that movie. Nice. You live and you're going to go and buy. I always bitch about this as well, because it's about understanding the intelligence. Everyone go and read the books as well. If you go to hermitology.press, linked in here, you'll see Are You a Master or Slave series. Yeah? Look at the debt side of situation. So many people dive in without thinking, oh, I just got 100k, just got 500k, just got $250,000. Gonna buy a car for 50k. Well, that's going down quite quickly, isn't it? You got 200 left. What are you gonna do? Well, I'm gonna go on vacay. Gonna spend do a gap year here and there. Money's dwindling. All I hear is money dwindling. What else you gonna do? Money dwindling. Well, say that again. You just bought what? Money dwindling. I gotta buy my mum a house. Money dwindling. Just gotta buy myself a new property. Money dwindling. You know you got to maintain that property that you bought, right, for the rest of your life until you decide to sell it on again. You're going to renovate that house. You're going to turn that into a hotel. What are you going to do with that to get a return on investment? Because I'll scream it all day. I've been broke and homeless. I understand what it looks like. I don't want to go back. I've seen my life when I don't have the degrees of freedom and I'm unfree. So my goodness gracious me, I'm going to need to study every ounce of the DoF to make sure I am liberated for life. And while we do that, let's liberate others. For education is a journey we should all be able to partake in, yes? So that's me, I'm signing off. I've said more than enough. Dive into these ideologies, read this ecological report, dive into what else is out on hermitology.me, on the main page, and on press, and on the school as well, because there's stuff all over the platform. Yeah? Check out all the other content on all the other channels featured at the top of this page as well, and I'll be back soon with more.